Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast. I am, of course, Nick McDaniel, and as always, I am joined by my buddy Myron.
Hey, good morning, afternoon, midday, evening, or overnight when you're listening to the show. We do appreciate that. And boy, are we tired today.
We're dragging a little bit, man.
It's Wednesday. We've been back for Wrestlecade for 3 days.
So we rolled back Sunday night, and I'm still dragging a little bit.
Yeah. It's been worth every minute though. Oh, what a great vacation.
Yeah.
What a great vacation.
If you've never attended a Wrestlecade event, it's up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's always the Friday following Thanksgiving. It's a convention that you really should make it a point to get out and see. I know there's lots of, people would argue like WrestleCon or even like a StarCast or things like that. Most people will tell you Wrestlecade, it hangs right there, if not is better than most of those as well.
It's so friendly. It's so open. Everybody is so nice. I can't tell you how it fulfills everything a wrestling fan could want. If you want great matches, if you just want great matches, you get that. If you want autographs, you get that. If you want to meet your wrestling heroes, you get that. And one of my favorite things are the Sunday morning panels, man. We've been 3 years in a row, and we've had Smoky Mountain, ECW, and then we had World Class Championship. I never can get that I tried to go WCC or whatever it was.
Yeah, WCC.
World Class out of Texas. And now that one was awesome. I was not expecting that one to be as good as it was. I did not get to watch World Class growing up we did not have cable in Birmingham, and man, those guys were awesome. Yeah. I felt like I watched every week after listening to that panel.
Black Bart stole the show, didn't he? He was
yes.
Yeah, but like
don't you get me started on them Von Erichs.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, man, Wrestlecade's everything you could want, and then just the sheer camaraderie, hanging out with good people year after year after year. Patreon members, Rafe, Hoop, those guys are there every year. And you should, by the way, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. Check it out and become a member, man, because lots of cool stuff over there. Even stuff that's cool, like, hey, you get a shirt, like Wrestling is Like Women. You don't have to understand them to love them. You can go prowrestlingtees.com and check out the shirts. If you subscribe at the right level, you get a free shirt thrown in there as well.
You really got back and done your laundry quicker than I have.
Dude, I'm quick. Yeah, my laundry
I washed it.
Is the next day it's back.
Yeah. I'm not as efficient as you.
Yeah.
I'm laying my ass.
But it's always a pleasure hanging out with JZ Flair, Hoop, Rafe. Is it a Wrestlecade experience if Dave's not involved? Dave Wills is not involved?
Dave Wills can introduce you to anyone. Okay? If he sees somebody, you say, you want to meet them? I want to meet Dave. And he walks over there and introduces you to him. I don't know if he actually knows everybody or he just doesn't give a shit, but he can talk to anybody. It's amazing.
Yeah. Overall, great experience. Put it on your calendars for next year. We keep telling you, Wrestlecade, man. Thanksgiving weekend, Friday through Sunday. Great wrestling. Fan fest for autographs if you're into that kind of stuff. Lots of people there from the old school days that you would love, and that you never know. We always, hate to say it, but you never know when's the last time you're going to get to see some of these guys. So it's a good place to go. I mean, hell, this year we're going to discuss this because one of our good friends of the show, Stephen Platinum, one of his missions is cleaning up Georgia wrestling specifically, but just cleaning up wrestling as a whole. And this kind of ties into, there was an opportunity. Great Muda doesn't do a lot of these things, and he was at Wrestlecade this year. Well, the part about cleaning up wrestling, Tracy Myers, who basically puts on this show at Wrestlecade, had to handle and deal with some shit that was just totally unnecessary and unprofessional with the Great Muda. And then we
not on Muda's part.
No, not Muda's. We're gonna clarify everything here in a second. But the as far as with him coming in, and this is the kind of stuff that needs to be understood. One, how straight up and honest of a businessman Tracy Myers is, and his dedication to putting on a great.
Very friendly when you meet him in person.
Oh yeah, easily one of the nicest guys you'll meet. but two, the kind of people that deal in wrestling that need to be cleaned out and brought to this. Like this stuff needs to be brought to the attention to so people understand and we can get this junk cleaned up. So we're going to synopsis it down. We're not going to give the long-winded explanation of it.
Long-winded.
So apparently there was a vendor who had been at Wrestlecade in the past who was going to who had wanted to bring in Muta, the Great Muta, for an appearance. If you're not familiar how some of this works, typically the vendor will handle all of the travel expenses, the cost for the appearance, everything up front, and then they get to keep all of the merch money, the earnings, 8x10 money, meet and greets or whatever. So let's say said wrestler says, hey, my ticket to come in is $1,000 on the plane, and this is not Muta's case. This was more expensive, I'm sure. My appearance fee is $2,500. So now you're 35. Oh, by the way, you got to get my hotel room. So now you're at, so let's whatever. So 25,000, 35. You end up at 4,000. Your expenses, you're at 4,000. Now you got to sell enough merch and stuff like that to kind of recoup the cost for you to try to come out into the positive.
Pre-sale on the meet and greets was like $13,000.
Yeah, for Muta. So here's the thing. Long story short, the people, his name is Mikey Duggar, and later on, James Cable Sr. were going to be drug in. You said they wrestled out of Tennessee.
Indie wrestlers out of Tennessee, yes.
But they did some vendor stuff, and they wanted to bring in Muta, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, they basically, at the last minute, they never got the money to the people that were supposed to, which obviously would be Sonny Ono and Great Muta. And so not in a negative way. I mean, Muta was like, well, he's not going to do the appearance if he's not paid at this point.
Well, who would?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so it's not like he did anything wrong, but Tracy goes out of his way to basically pay to take care of the situation because it was advertised on his show.
It was on his poster. He's going to make sure the guy gets there.
He was one of the main draws to the show. So obviously that's why this, boils down. So Tracy basically eats the call. He has to pay for all of this. And these guys have basically shafted him on the money. And, Muta, his credit, got his money. He did what he was, he came and he did his appearance and kudos. And I know the line was insane. He did really well while he was there. So kudos to him at least for doing his job. But guys need to be pointed out when they're not doing what they were supposed to do. And there's lots of allegations of those guys got that pre-sale money. And that was, where's that money?
That's wrestling. I mean, for lack of a better way to put it. And that's why I think the business should be just purged of people like that. They shouldn't be allowed to continue. That kind of stuff and the racism and the homophobia that keeps making the headlines in independent wrestling. It's time to put that behind us. Okay? I'm not saying us. I'm not in the business. But those don't need to be the headlines for wrestling. People need to do the right thing. We're not carnies. They're not carnies anymore. So let's kind of clean this up. That's big money nowadays. Wrestling's drawing big money. Like 8,000 people were there for the Super Show Saturday night. Now, do you know any other indie wrestling shows? That drew more than AEW draws. It drew more than some of the WWE shows. That's a big deal. That's a big deal, and we're doing good, and then these people do like that kind of stuff, and that sucks. Yeah,
that's the kind of stuff, like I said, that's the stuff that needs to be cleaned up and called out when it's bad, and so those guys really need to be, if you're doing business with these guys, you need to reconsider it, because that was pretty crappy on a very, very big stage.
And if you find somebody that can say something bad about Tracy Myers, let me know, because I have not seen anything bad said about him anywhere. And I really appreciate him going out of his way to make sure the show went on the way it should go. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for
would have never known.
Experience. Would never have known.
So, kudos to the man. Like I said, we appreciate it. We look forward to it every Thanksgiving. The weekend. It's like you said, it's become your vacation from work.
Yes.
It's a good way to we're expressed to
I'm going to relax. I am going to have to remember to shave and get my hair down before I do these shows, because it's looking like I'm fuzzy, like the picture is fuzzy, but it's actually the gray peach fuzz all over my face.
Well, luckily it's not too bad. It's not too bad, but So let's move on. We wanted to get that addressed, and then we're going to hit a lot of the topics we really wanted to talk about this week. But you definitely add Wrestlecade to your
Yep.
calendar if you are a fan of any of those fan fest type of things. Wrestlecade Friday after Thanksgiving, definitely want to check it out.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every single day.
So let's jump into the meat of the show here. There was a cool article I thought that came out from Forbes magazine. It was 5 hard lessons AEW must learn from the WWE.
Where'd you get that again, Nick?
Forbes magazine.
Forbes magazine now covers wrestling. It's still the most amazing thing that it's come to this point.
I'm with you, but it's big money, and it's things that, like I said, I agree, they've got to learn some lessons, and
Yeah.
Some of them are going to be
any business where you don't learn, you're going to fail. Any business where you don't pay attention to what the bigger companies are doing, you're going to fail. So this is good if they will listen.
Yeah. So let's jump into them and see what what your thoughts are on them as well. So number 1 was ensure strong character development. And let's think of it this way. That's what a lot of people have knocked WWE for years now, is they've really lacked character development, guys progressing. They kind of make a guy and then he kind of stays the same. So my translation is, when I looked over at the AEW roster, and I thought to myself, lots of the top guys have character development. They are who they are. I mean, we know who Cody is. We know who Jericho. We know who, even MJF. I mean, even being a younger guy, he's still a top tier guy, so we know who he is.
Well, he lets you know who he is. He cuts the promos. He has the social media presence that's dead on point on everything he does. This guy is that good, and he establishes himself. You're going to hate him. He makes you aware of who he is. That's what a heel is supposed to do. And he's doing a perfect job. But some of these other guys, like best friends.
Well, that's what we're talking about. It's the top, that mid-card lower level guy. I think that's where some focus needs to come and be pushed into, let's learn who these guys are, because your goal is you want to make those guys be the next wave, and that's, I think, how they need to do it.
Well, they did a really, really good job with all the videos leading up to All In. Wasn't All In. It was
Double or Nothing.
Double or Nothing. Did a great job. That road to Double or Nothing, all that stuff is great. Being the Elite, great. But it's not on television. You can't expect a wrestling fan to I should prepare for this event by learning who everyone on the card is. I should look at No, that's not how that works. You need to make them develop on the show. You can't do bios. People are just going to turn on the television. They're not going to go do research. Wrestling is simple. Well, you got to make them on the TV.
Well, that's exactly lesson number 2, was finding the right mix on your TV show of wrestling and promos. And that's basically what you're talking about there. Is one of the concerns was there was a quote from Cody that says that AEW won't be doing long drug out promos. It won't cater to the casual fan. I think that's the one that triggers to me a little bit, and that promos won't be scripted. So my concern of that is promos are how you get emotionally invested in a character. We were talking about some of those mid-card, even lower level guys. Give them a little bit of promo time so we learn who they are, get invested. It could even backstage promos. It can be video packages. I know they're trying to do some of that now with the Dark Order, and some of these other guys are doing these video packages, which I think that's the good direction to head. Because let's be blunt, how can I put this? Promos are what will draw the casual fan in.
You have to introduce yourself to people. A promo to a wrestling fan is like someone coming up and saying, "Hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'm a good guy or a bad guy." If you don't talk, you don't know. That was always my trouble when I tried to sit down and watch New Japan or Ring of Honor. As someone who didn't watch every single program or rarely watched it at all, I had no idea who anybody was. I need promos. I need to be able to be introduced to characters. Get some mouthpieces. Get some managers. I mean, would you ever have known Flair was a jet flying, limousine riding heel if he hadn't done the promo. You'd have saw him cheating in the ring, but the promo's what got him over. Remember that. You got to get over. It's getting over is so important because nobody knows who you are until you get over. And you can't do that without talking. Look at Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns apparently is one of the greatest guys in professional wrestling today to be around. Super personality. He's not a good promo, and he's not being fed good material to do on his promos, and therefore he's never really got the fans. Now, he's got the women and kids, but he's never got the dudes, and he needs better promos.
Well,
even I've got cancer. I mean, seriously, that was the best promo he ever did, and he actually had cancer. That's the bad part.
You brought up like the scripted promos, like that's a part of it as well. Is yes, not having a scripted promo makes total sense if you're Cody Rhodes, you're Chris Jericho. Apparently, MJF's got that talent level. I mean, Dustin. There's going to be guys that don't need the script. They should know. They know who they're back. I know it's like, oh, well, there's a lot to be said for a guy having some of a script, or even if it's bullet points, an outline. We're not talking like direct script word for word. Who knows? There may be some guys that's a necessity for now until they get better at it.
You can't just, you can't start a company and say what you're not going to do. Okay? That's not how that works. You're going to have to adapt. You're going to have to change. You're going to have to build. Just saying, I'm not going to do scripted promos, or we're not going to have writers, or there's a formula of success, and the WWE does it. You may not always like it, but that's how they do it. So you kind of have to look at it and learn a little something. You don't have to copycat everything they do. God knows that's not what anybody wants. But take what they do right, take what's likable, and work with that.
I agree. We'll move on to number 3. It was do not sign too much talent only to waste them. That is, the epitome of what a lot of people complain about WWE is that they just have such a massive roster that there are guys that are not doing anything. They don't know what to do with them, so they're just sitting at home. That does happen. You have to also keep in mind, like we constantly hear, like, oh, this guy's available. He should go to AEW, blah, blah, blah. We're going to come in some other topics about this towards the end.
A lot of those guys that you don't see on TV are working house shows, and they're working what's main event. So there's 4 total WE programs if you think about it, and the house shows circuit. So they're getting used. They're just not getting used the way you'd like them to. But they have, that's 7 hours of television just on the main shows. 7 hours of television. That's going to take a lot of bodies.
Right.
Okay? You got to job some guys out. You got to do some stuff with guys. But if you look at, we just broke down the AEW roster right before we started this. Talent up here, talent down there. Nobody in the middle. What I would concentrate on is doing what Jericho wants to do and build those lower guys up. The ones that can handle it. Develop those guys. Sammy Guevara, pull him up. That guy's got a lot of potential, even though he's small. Got a lot of potential. You can do a lot of business with Luchasaurus if you handle him right. That Jungle Boy Luchasaurus gig was great till they brought in Marco Stunt. That just ruined the whole thing. Take what you're doing well. The guy from Private Party, I can't remember his name, that's so good. Bring him up. You start bringing in more top-tier old WWE guys, and who do you become?
Well, that's the next topic we're going to go with. It was don't rely on too many WWE stars to fill your roster. Like right now you have Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley, you have Jack Hager, Pat, Cody, Dustin, and Spears, who from the outside world looking in, most people would call WWE guys.
God, that sounds a lot like somebody else did that.
Well, Impact went too heavy on that, and so they were WWE light. And that's, kind of one of the funny lines I said on the pre-show, I thought was, if you're right now, if you step back and you realistically looked at the promotions that run on Wednesday night, you have to take out the Survivor Series window, that bubble there for a reason, because there was so much cross promotion for Survivor
That was a
Series.
commercial.
That was a commercial for Survivor Series. Let's take the product as a whole. AEW was built and promoted as the WWE alternative.
Mm-hmm.
To me, right now, NXT looks less WWE than AEW when you look at their rosters.
Indie guys we've seen, indie guys we've met.
It is Ring of Honor heavy.
On NXT. More guys from Ring of Honor. Jesus Christ, we were talking the other day how AEW ripped out Ring of Honor, but good God, NXT's got the Undisputed Era, Punishment Martinez.
You got Ciampa,
Gargano.
But then you've just got other guys. Like I said, we were talking about. You got Matt Riddle. You've got Keith Lee.
Seen both of those guys live in person in small venues.
And the only WWE guy, I know somebody's going to say like Obrazongo. Slow down. The only real WWE guy, and I know NXT is WWE. Let's not get into semantics here, but the Raw, SmackDown guys who are actually back on like regularly for NXT now is Finn Balor. And great episode, by the way, of the Corey Graves After the Bell with an interview of him a couple weeks ago about why he went back. You should definitely go out of your way to check that out.
That's become one of your favorite podcasts, isn't it?
When I get around to it, I don't listen to it every week, but like I said, sometimes I'll binge and get 2 of them in because it's not always super time relevant, which is cool. But my question to them is, AEW needs to watch out, because when you look at their show, the more, if you start picking up WWE guy after WWE, because everybody's like, oh, they should take the Revival. Oh, they should take Mike Kanellis. Oh, they should take, Luke Harper. You run a very high risk of like, you're no longer the alternative, you're a copy. And now you can try to present your show different. You can try to put 6 sides on the ring, and call it what you want. It still ends up looking like WWE Light when you start loading up. If they hit the magic number, to me, that magic number is somewhere between 12 and 15 WWE guys. When they hit that, you are WWE Light officially.
Well, they need to find some of the WB women, some of the talented women to work in there, because somebody to nurture that division, that's where they need to be adding experienced talent.
Absolutely. And that's the final topic, is they've got to do something with the women's division. We are a couple months in that. And then we love women's wrestling, right? Because that's one of your favorite things to watch.
That's it's most of what I watch.
There's a total lack of direction and storyline with the women's division right now in AEW.
I mean, I know Japanese wrestling, Japanese women wrestling has a huge history, and it's very, very reputable. It's something that is revered. It's something that everybody looks up to in the female wrestling business, and a lot of people in this country that are connoisseurs of women's wrestling. But if you're making wrestling not for casual fans, if you're making wrestling for your demographic, that's the women's wrestling you want. I mean, it is. It's Japanese women's wrestling. It's boutique. It's stuff people used to have to tape trade to get. But your average fan is, you're going to have to step outside that window and find something that's going to talk to people. Brandy, Britt Baker, there's your most marketable property right there. Britt Baker, nothing.
We talked about the Nyla Rose Awesome Kong thing. Like, where did it go? It's really not a lot happened on it since. Just in general, like, you can knock a lot of WWE women's storylines, but they're leaps and bounds better right now when it comes to it. And where AEW's women division, they've just got to fix it. And I'm all about time and giving it time, but I just don't feel like they're just having matches at this point.
All the things they've done right at AEW, I don't think anything's been done right in the women's division. You bring in Nyla Rose, you're going to push her, you cool her off. You push her, you cool her off. No storyline. Is she a heel? Is she a monster like Awesome Kong? Is she your big badass? You put her over in that huge battle royal. She won the whole thing from like first position. That's a person you're going to push, and then you don't see her on TV for a couple of weeks. But you got these little Japanese women and that old Japanese woman wrestling. Americans don't understand Japanese wrestling. I'm sorry.
I disagree slightly there. I don't have any issues whatsoever with that. I just think it's the lack of promos, something we talked about earlier.
Yes.
There's no investment. You're like, okay, so Nyla Rose should be the heel, but wait a minute, Brandy's acting like a heel. She brought in an Awesome Kong. So Nyla should be the babyface if she's feuding. But there's just the total lack of story, and I think you can't get emotionally invested in it with the lack of story.
Okay. Big John Studd, Bundy, Vader, Earthquake, Typhoon, Andre the Giant. They were bigger than anyone else in their divisions at the time. They all worked as heels. It's hard to put over somebody as big as Nyla Rose wrestling Riho, who's probably all of less than 100 pounds, as a babyface. You just can't do it. She's going to have to be the heel. She's so much dramatically bigger. So you're giving a lack of character development to the person you want to push the most. And I don't get it. I just don't get it. And that's the thing. I don't mean to shit on what these guys are doing. I don't understand it, though.
I think the only thing that saves him in the long run is and it's kind of contradicted something I just kind of said, which is kind of ironic that I think the women's division needs. If they're not going to invest the time in its, promos and story wise, I think down the road you're going to have to go after names like, and I know they're under contract. Some of this is you just kind of you're kind of preface the arguments ahead of time, right? You're going to need a name like Jordan Grace. You're going to need a name like Tessa Blanchard. You're going to need a name like Taya Valkyrie.
There's no way they can't convince me. They've got if they want to do it, they can put the money in and buy out all those contracts. Bring Gail Kim backstage. Okay. Bring people backstage that know women's wrestling. Bring Kevin Harvey from Rise backstage. He knows how to handle women's wrestling. People that can book women's wrestling. People know how to work with women's wrestlers. Those people are out there. Okay? They're out there, and you have the money. Those great wrestlers we saw, it's going to be the next topic. You said Taya Valkyrie, Jordan Grace, Tessa Blanchard, Rosemary, and Sue Young. What are all those four women have in common? Sorry. Next topic.
Well, yeah, it's going to actually bring our first two topics in together because, when we're talking about women's wrestling in general. So, obviously, at Wrestlecade, and we're talking about women's wrestling, Sandman, ECW fame, made some comments about women women main eventing was wrong.
Directly to said women, individually, one at a time.
Ballsy that he went to he said it to, if nothing else, he said it to their face, he said it to them, and said, yeah, and then he doubled down. He was on Busted Open Radio and gave his side of the story, and his side of the story was, yep, I said it. It's a kind of a tricky thing because, he openly basically says he hasn't watched wrestling in like a decade. So it was a very ignorant comment. Because if you're not watching, here's the thing. I didn't say what he said was right on the pre-show. What I said was, because, I'm sure that's going to come out and say like, no, I said, if you hadn't watched wrestling in a decade and your last memories of wrestling of women was it was lots of bra and panties.
Francine,
just
Victoria, not Victoria. Sorry, not Victoria. The Divas.
Right. If you remember the Divas era, then yes, those women wouldn't have been main eventing. Now, it wasn't any fault of theirs, and it wasn't lack of talent. It was how they were booked. Now, the problem is clearly within the last 10 years, women have been booked better. The athletic ability has been shown off to no end. They're putting on phenomenal matches. Of course, they main evented a WrestleMania. They've main evented
the Survivor Series. Main evented Hell in a Cell.
So
I think it main evented everything. And Wrestlecade is the biggest show in indie wrestling that I know of. And they main evented it. You know why? Because they sold the damn tickets. That's why they main event. They sold the tickets. People paid their money to see that. They wouldn't have paid their money if that's not what they wanted to see. That's what they book wrestling for, to put people in the seats to
Do
watch
you
it.
remember last year at that show, we thought like at the end of that Super Show that the women's match that Taya Valkyrie was like the best
That
match we
was
saw
2 years ago.
2 years ago, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that was Taya Valkyrie and Eva Lise, and it was brutal. Jesus Christ, scared the hell out of me. Folks, you wouldn't pay money to see these people wrestle if you didn't think they could wrestle. You put them in the main event to sell tickets and draw fans. Every one of those women could probably shoot on Sandman. Sandman never could wrestle. He was a personality. He was a character. He was mainly paid in drugs. These are athletes who work out, who exercise, who train. Tessa Blanchard is a badass. Jordan Grace is a badass. Sue Young is crazy. Rosemary is badass. And Taya Valkyrie, shit. That woman whoop, yo. Sandman, lucky he didn't get his ass whipped. I mean, Taya Valkyrie is huge, okay? Large, big, strong woman. Tessa Blanchard's fixing to go for the Impact Championship in January. You know why they booked that? To draw people. Sandman, during the signing show, was walking around, not at his table. You know why? Nobody was in line for him. I had to circle the table that had Jordan Grace, Big Swole, Kiera Hogan, Diamante, like 6 times before I could get close enough to get an autograph. And I had Justin DeSend, the guy that was running the table, I know him. So a friend of mine's running the table, and I still have to wait in line that long. Sandman's wandering around not doing anything. Tessa Blanchard had a line all day long. They come to see these people. They pay to see these people. If there were men that they wanted to see in the main event, there would have been men in the main event. Wrestlecade took a chance because that's what people wanted to see. You're wrong, Sandman. You might have been right 10 years ago when you watched wrestling, like Nick said, but that's not the way it goes anymore. We've come a long way, baby, or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I mean, women's wrestling has come a long, long, long way, and kudos for all the women who have, from beginning to the end to where we are right now, and the journey still going that they're drawing.
8,000 people.
Yeah.
At the show. And
so, yeah, and that's, let's talk about it, man. You're right. I mean, let us know first if, what's your take on women main eventing and Sandman's thoughts and Sandman's words. We always want to know your opinion, man. So let us know. Always, you can reach out to us at Tapped Out Pod on any of your social media platforms, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, etc., Instagram. Let us know because we're just curious. What was your thoughts on how it all went down and what Sandman had to say? Because now let's jump into the next topic we were going to adjust, and that was attendance. You brought up the 8,000 people, right? That was packed the house at Wrestlecade this weekend at the Super Show. Ratings, all of this is kind of got to bundle together. First and foremost, I want to get the one out of the way. There was another article that I read about when it comes to attendance. Attendance on a national level and attendance on an indie level, to me, are two different things.
3 words: TV deal. That's 2 words. Actually.
2 words: TV deal. But,
yeah.
So you popped me there. Sorry.
TV, 2 words.
So the reason we want to talk about this is the article that I'm mentioning here was about, is it time for these crowd photos to stop? And there's a couple reasons why they should. And we're going to kind of go through them pretty quick because I want to get into the ratings.
I'm at a WE show and they've got half the arena cordoned off with tarps, and there's nobody here, and it didn't sell any tickets except for me. I bought a ticket, so I'm gonna post a picture about how shitty the show looks.
Okay, that's gonna be number 3. Let's just work our way backwards. So number 3, it's just dumb because you want to sit there and basically what you're gonna tell them is this product is so crappy, nobody buys tickets, but I'm dumb enough to buy the ticket for the crappy show. That's essentially what you're trying to do when you take a photo from inside.
Yes.
Now, that being said, let's go into one. Let's attendance when it comes to indie shows is the measurable.
Yes.
When you go on the national level, when you're talking AEW, when you're talking WWE, etc., it's a measurable. And everybody's like, what's the difference? A measurable means it's one of many. Indie shows, it's the measurable because it's really money and attendance is really all that you can measure on an indie show.
Yeah, and hot dogs sold. I mean, that's and if
that's
you don't
attendance.
have people there,
yeah,
you can't sell the hot dogs.
So, and what we mean by that is you're right. There's, wrestling for television generally involves a TV deal where they've already been paid and they're trying to. Now, we're not saying attendance doesn't matter at all for the WWE. It does because there's ticket sales and again, because it's a measurable.
You're not looking at the crowd. You're not watching the crowd when you're at home on your couch.
So, and then there's also the fact that guess what? It's generally they're a weeknight for TV.
Yeah.
Now, Raw, Monday was somehow always been the exception. Hadn't quite figured that one out yet. But Wednesday for Dynamite, that's why I'm a big fan of. I think people chuckle when I say NXT needs to stay where it's at. You don't want to start running bigger arenas and risk going through exactly what AEW is going through right now, where ticket sales, we've heard that the ticket sales for the Ohio show are not very good. I mean, just stay in your little, Full Sail University home and keep packing that building every week.
Made, man.
Yeah.
I got it made.
And then, of course, Friday nights, Jesus, on SmackDown. If you want to talk about, ticket sales are slow, a lot of the cities they run, there's so much to do on a Friday night.
Yeah.
And who just, I don't know. I just think that weeknight in general is going to be a challenge, and I'm not saying it's, whatever. But anyway, just the attendance, the photos, just stop it because it's just dumb.
Unless it's an indie event.
You don't even know when the picture's taken. That's the other topic. People take the picture. The show starts at 8. They take a picture at 7:15, 7:20. They got there early, got in their seat, and you're like, especially, God forbid, I tell people all the time in Atlanta, no one's on time to any sporting event.
No.
I mean, half an hour after the shows start, there's still people trickling in, filling in the seat.
Well, that's when you count crowd at a show. You count it right before intermission. You count it right before the main event. You don't count it at the first bell because there won't be anybody there.
I mean, sometimes that's the case, exactly.
And especially with shows with pre-shows like Southern Honor, those people that have their seats bought, they show up the last minute, pop right in. Their seat's guaranteed. The one picture that really needs to stop though is if you've got 30 people in your crowd and you report over 100 and then you post videos and pictures of your show and it's barren, stop that.
Yeah.
You look like an idiot.
That is true. That's on the indie level, of course.
Yeah.
Now the rating side of it, because everybody has been under the mad, celebratory. We're 2 weeks into 2 weeks in a row now. NXT has beaten AEW on Wednesday nights in the Wednesday Night Wars. I know NXT lost there for 6 straight weeks, something like that. They lost to AEW, so everybody went crazy. So 810,000 for NXT last week, 657 for AEW. And one of my favorite people when it comes to talking about ratings to hear is Eric Bischoff shared his thoughts on one of the episodes. I believe this week's episode. I shouldn't say one of his episodes. And it was very simple. Who cares right now? He's like, talk to me in a year. I mean, this honestly right now doesn't mean a whole lot. We're 8 weeks into this project. He's like, hopefully the networks are happy with what they're getting right now. I don't think they're going to be happy with this number a year from now. If they don't show some limited, some growth of some kind, if it's got to be somewhere between 1.2 to 1.5 million a year from now. Or he was like, he doesn't believe the networks are going to be happy with. They're not going to be happy with 657,000, obviously, or 810,000 from NXT.
Well, here's the thing, though. If NXT fails, you got nothing to lose. You just put it back on the network and everything's fine. No problem. If AEW fails to get the ratings, where are you going to go?
the concern would be if they don't draw ratings and TNT's ready to move on, be careful, because then you start becoming the next Impact, where you bounce from one home.
Movies.
Do what?
You want up on Turner Classic Movies. You want up to the Pursuit Channel.
True TV. That's where they run the simulcast sometimes. But yeah, that's the concern. Is we've always said that Vince has more wiggle room, and the say like, oh well, USA's not going to keep it. Well, they could just always go back to the network, like you said. That's just they've always got a home.
Mm-hmm.
They drew a paycheck on a product for a year that they didn't think they were gonna make any money on anyway, until at the last minute, until USA throws them a money deal for it. They're probably like, all right, this is extra found money. And the concern being, in the grand scheme of things, is yes, if all of those lessons we talked about that AEW needs to try to look into and make grow. I know they say they don't want to cater to the casual fan. You have to, or you're not going to grow to that 1.5 million.
Especially if your fans aren't going to turn out like enough to give you your ratings every week. You're going to have to appeal to other markets. You have to look at other demographics. You may win every demographic, but over 50. That's what NXT won this last week. They killed them at over 50. They got more people watching. It's because wrestling fans are watching it. Your diehard, your old-fashioned guys who want to watch NWA on television, your old-fashioned guys that want to watch older wrestling are tuning into NXT because it looks like a wrestling show, and it doesn't have all of the Monday Night Raw bullshit and Bobby and what's her name and all that other crap going on. You got wrestling, you got wrestling storylines, you've got people in the ring that are trained athletes who look like wrestlers. You will never see Marco stunt on NXT.
You could. I'm not saying that's not possible.
If they did, he would be handled correctly. Folks, it looks like wrestling. It sounds like wrestling. It's wrestling. It's wrestling a guy that's been out of wrestling for 10 years could watch. It's wrestling people I meet at Wrestlecade that talk about the old days could watch NXT because it looks like a wrestling product. It's the big studio wrestling. It's not NWA style studio. It's big studio wrestling. It's men and women fighting in what looks to be legitimate combat with legitimate problems. That Dakota Kai turn, you know what that is? That's a legitimate problem. That built heat. She smashed the cage door on that girl. That girl's going to be angry. That girl is going to come back and be angry at Dakota Kai. And then they're going to have a fight. And you're going to believe the fight because you start getting slammed in the damn cage. That's a storyline. That's how wrestling works.
Well, my bigger thing is, like I said, we mentioned it earlier, is you got to be careful if you're the alternative, but the WWE has the alternative in-house. It seems like more people are going to that because, like you said, right now, the more WWE guys, I implore them not to sign a bunch of more WWE guys. I think that they need to go more, build their stars from the ground level and long-term thinking.
Eli Drake.
Right. There's going to be NWA guys that they could pull in. There's going to be stuff like that down the road. I think that's
Storm.
Something, anything. So, well, we'll see where the ratings are, man. We'll see. Like I said, let's look at it in a year and we'll see where we are. I'm sure, of course, the unfortunate part is we get to look at it weekly, monthly, along the travel. But it doesn't matter. Ultimately, I think that was the epitome of it. Is I really wanted to stress that we have to talk about it week in and week out. It feels like. But it doesn't matter for right now. In the grand scheme of things, the whole it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. They both now have had the pleasure of eating that humble pie for the sprint of we beat you, you beat us, back and forth. So now they need to both settle down and focus on the long term and look at the marathon and not the sprint of it now. And we'll see. So, but hey, what do you know? But hey, man, let's go ahead and go to one of our favorite areas of the show. It is now going to head into the Georgia Indie Talk section. This week brought to you by none other than Southern Honor Wrestling. They've got a big show coming up this Friday. It's up at the Action Building at 261 Marietta Road up in Canton, Georgia. Get your ticket to southernhonorwrestling.com. But, man, before we get into the segment, we always send over some of those cool little commercials, so let's check it out, man.
Attention wrestling fans, join us for a special holiday edition of Southern Honor Wrestling, December 6th, live from the Action Building in Canton, Georgia.
Oh my God! Logan Creed! Logan Creed has done it! Logan Creed!
Southern Honor champion Logan Creed puts his title on the line as he takes on Lethal Poison's Corey Hollis in a Canton street fight.
I can't believe what we're seeing here, folks. One of the hottest free agents in all of wrestling, Gunnar Miller, is in a Southern Honor Wrestling ring.
Gunnar Miller makes his SHW in-ring debut as he goes one-on-one with Blanco Loco. The Lynch Mob and Not Yet Rated continue their best-of-3 series for the SHW Tag Team titles. And don't miss the return of Ashton Starr's Petty Party with special guests Joe Black and William Huckabee.
There's still more to the story of William Huckabee and Joe Black. How can they settle this score?
Plus, Owen Knight versus Barry Morales, David Ali versus Fry Daddy, and so much more. Don't miss SHW 15 and experience the excitement. Doors open at 7 p.m., bell time at 8 p.m. Be sure to grab your tickets now at SouthernHonorWrestling.com.
Well, man, that's going to be one hell of a card as always, brother. Again, man, Logan Creed, Corey Hollis, Southern Honor Championship. That's clearly the top of your card. This thing's up for feud of the year, man. They've been beating on each other for a while now.
How are two of the main feud of the year candidates on this show? Southern Honor's got two of them. The whole Joe Black thing with Huckabee, going to sign a contract at the Petty Party with Ashton Starr. I bet something happens.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. There's nothing bad on this. I'm looking forward to seeing Gunnar Miller work again. Really looking forward to that. Looking for the Petty Party tag team match. But the main event, that's going to be the business right there.
Going to be physical for sure, to say the least. Gunnar Miller, like you said, man, 2 years in the making, the return of Gunnar Miller, and it's going to be at Southern Honor this Friday. Like I said, Not Yet Rated versus the Lynch Mob. They're going into the second match of their best-of-3 series to become the first Southern Honor champions, tag team champions. Top to bottom, they're stacking out their cards. They've got debuts, guys making returns, all that good stuff coming down.
Ali and Fry Daddy's a sleeper. That's going to be a good match.
Oh, that should be really good, yeah. Again, SouthernHonorWrestling.com. Get your tickets early. But then you're always going to make your way out there. If you can't get your tickets early, don't worry about it. Come on out to 261 Marietta Road, Canton, Georgia, at the Action Building. You get tickets at the door. But, man, if you're wanting some really good seats up front, you got to go to SouthernHonorWrestling.com and get those tickets and get them ahead of time. But, man, that's going to be one hell of a show. We're looking forward to being out there on Friday. I know you're going to finally get – you missed the last one. You get to go back with me this time.
Yes. I got a good wrestling weekend this weekend. Southern Honor on Friday. I'm going to Southern Fried on Saturday. Southern Fried's got a pretty good show lined up. Scorched Earth, December 7th, 405 Community Court. Bell time at 7 o'clock. I think y'all should get out there and see that one too.
I agree.
Taking 2 shows this weekend.
Well, let's get into kind of the big talk for the last few weeks. If we've been slowly chugging through the Georgia Wrestling History Awards, trying to get them all covered. Next week, we should get the final 3 after we cover what we've got this week. And that should wrap us up right at the time where all the voting and everything's going on. So should work itself out perfect. First and foremost, though, before we get into the topics for the categories, every time around this year, when this stuff starts coming out, there's a lot of crap that hits the, social media about, they don't mean anything or they don't. My comeback is usually if it doesn't mean anything, it means you probably aren't being nominated for anything.
Who was Wrestler of the Year last year? He was Most Improved year before last? Logan Creed. He just got signed to MLW. I believe the voters made an excellent choice those last 2 years, don't you? Folks, they mean something. They're the only organized wrestling awards in Georgia. One of the best states in the country for independent wrestling. And don't be that guy.
And they're nominated. It's not like it's like just random Joes make it up. They're nominated. We've started seeing some nominations flung on social media today. It's like, oh, you can vote in private or whatever, but some people are just throwing them out there and throwing them in. And look, we fully are aware you're going to get some homer voting.
Yeah.
You are. You're going to get guys who are just going to vote for guys in their promotion. You're going to get all of that kind of stuff. This is my favorite, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, send them in. Send in your nominations. It'll all be sorted out and voted upon, and somebody's going to win. The reason I brought this up is because last year was one of the first years we were kind of, really kind of into it as far as the involvement goes. And one of the things is, last year some arguments were made like, hey, Southern Honor should be up for Promoter of the Year. Gary Lamb came in. He was one of the loudest mouths promoting, in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably. But he was only, and everybody's argument, well, it was only a couple months. One of the big things is a lot of promoters are saying, look at him this year, right? They've got a chance to run make a big, huge impact on these awards. And honestly, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I think they probably will. Promoters that are like, hey, well, we're making a big push. We're making a change. Quit pissing and moaning about it and make yourself get noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Get your name out there. You can do it. If you don't think so you may sit there and say, so Gary Lamb is the loudest voice as far as the promoters go in Georgia. Arguably or not. It's not, in my opinion. He made sure people knew about Southern Honor. Some people took notice instead of just pissing and moaning about it. Say what you want. James Caleb Kitchens has been a voice for Viral Pro and has made their name get out there.
Spinebuster down in Valdosta. All those people, you don't care about South Georgia. Nobody likes South Georgia wrestling. You don't talk about that. You know what they do? They submit their damn reports. They promote their shows. They take videos of full houses.
They reach out. They get their voices. They get their voices
work
heard.
With people. Find out who to talk to and talk to them. It's not hard.
Yeah, there were promotions that if you had asked us, like I said, 2 years ago or even a year ago maybe, who they were, that they didn't know, but they have went out of their way to make sure that, and you don't want to, I'm not saying the right people, but I'm just saying like the people who will help you get your name out there and push you, they have done that. For crying out loud, I mean, I don't mean this in a negative way. We advertise for promotions. Clearly, this week it was Southern Honor Wrestling. If the best promoter, with the loudest voice in Georgia sees the value in it, why would somebody who not so much can't? I don't understand that. But get out there, make yourself notice. Social media is a big thing. Podcasts are a thing. Georgia Wrestling History, they have a show as well, The Tipping Point. Like there are a multitude of ways to get your name and your voice out there. Do that instead of just pissing and moaning that we're not nominated for stuff. And then bluntly, in some ways, there are promotions who are like, we're not nominated for. You don't deserve to be nominated for stuff. There are wrestlers who are nominated that don't deserve to be. There are some that do.
I found out about Spinebuster Championship Wrestling because Hold My Beer Hansen was on when Stephen Platinum and Larry invited people onto the show to do promos. He came on to do a show. He talked about his promotion. He submitted a report to Georgia Wrestling History. I told him it sucked. He asked me how to make it better. I was stunned that he didn't tell me to go fuck off. He actually wanted to make his report better. So that Spinebuster got my attention. I started following what they were doing. I started telling other people about it. I started bringing their name up in conversation with people who matter.
We said, think about it. I sat at a table. We're not going to say who. If he wants everybody to know, he'll let everybody know if he listens to this. We were at a show and we were critical of a show, and then this guy was on the card, and we were discussing about, my whole take is, in the grand scheme of things, Georgia Wrestling History, Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast, in any other avenue like that, in the grand scheme, I can specifically speak to those two. Georgia Wrestling History and the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast. I can assure and tell promoters, no one is crapping on your promotion in a negative way in the sense of we want everybody to be better. Like if I write something or I say something and it's critical, it's generally in a way it's like, hey, I want you to fix this because I want you to be better, in my opinion. Now you can say my opinion doesn't mean shit and not worry about it and move on, or you can understand and go like, well, he has watched wrestling for a long time and maybe he's seen it from a perspective that we don't have. Let's try it. Do what you want. We're not crapping on you to crapping on you just to be crapping on you.
You can get your name out there. It's the internet age, the age of information. If you're not nominated for something, instead of saying it don't count, you go out there and get your ass nominated for something next year. You're in the wrestling business. Anybody in the wrestling business is allowed to turn in nominations.
If a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, did it really happen? Make sure there's somebody standing there to hear it.
Yeah. It's not hard.
Simple.
There's the internets.
Yeah. So, but anyway, let's jump into the 3 we're going to talk about this week. This week, we're going to start off with the announcer / ring announcer / commentator, whatever. But I call it the announcer of the year. Jonathan Feltner's been kind of a runaway for the last few years. I think this year he's got some real competition from Pat up at Southern Honor. I know Pat's gone now, but for the better part of the year.
Pat was. He moved. They flew him back down to do shows from Pennsylvania. Pat's just that damn good. I wish he was still working in Georgia, but he worked 10 months and last year for 2 months.
Yeah.
So he worked a full year in Georgia. Technically, it wasn't the calendar year, but I think Pat McDermott is the most skilled. Pat McDermott is like an old school WWE ring announcer. He is the Michael Buffer of independent wrestling. He is working again where he lives now. This guy has great talent. He is my hands down vote. None against anybody else, but this guy is really good.
No, I'm right there with you. Well, like I said, I think announcers down to Feltner, McDermott, and Jason Boyd. I think those, and those were nominations that we kind of have out there. There's others. I mean, obviously that's why we tell everybody you can go. It's all over Facebook at this point where you can nominate. Just look up Georgia Wrestling History. The post is there that you can DM, private message them. Your nominations and stuff are all there. So just got to get all that sent in. That's a big one. Performer of the year. This one's to me always one of the hardest one because of the sheer definition of what it means. Because there's wrestler of the year and then there's performer of the year. So I look at this award in such a weird way that maybe I'm not capturing everybody. But when I see this award, I think of guys like, like Matt Sells, Ashton Starr. Like that's kind of what I see in my head. Am I wrong? I mean, I know you had some other names.
The way I look at it, this is my take on it. I look at performer not only as the person who was great at his gimmick or great at his bit, but I look at it as the person who was essential to storylines. His bit was his gimmick got storylines progressed. His gimmick got things over. His gimmick was able to put other people over with it. His gimmick was essential for the success of a promotion. And I don't think anyone's gimmick was any more important than Corey Hollis's all year long. Nowhere did he go that he wasn't. I mean, Southern Fried and Southern Honor were the 2 main Georgia shows he worked. He was always essential for everything. He was the guy who made it happen in both promotions, being the dastardly heel, the horrible, mean heel. Now, AC Mack's a phenomenal performer. Ashton Starr, phenomenal performer. I've not got to see Simon Sermon yet. I've not got to meet him yet. I've seen his work on the internet. Great performer. But if you look at the central figure, to me, it has to be Corey Hollis. He's the thing that ties so much together. And he's not a bad person. So, I mean, it's a gimmick.
Yeah. I mean, I threw Matt Hankins in there as well at the last minute to kind of, and I didn't mean it as a last minute, but I mean, it was what it was.
He drove a lot. As the manager of that faction, he was able to get a lot of people over. He's a great vote for that too.
So definitely that's another one we want to check out. I still, like I said, my favorites are probably Matt Sells, Ashton Starr probably overall for me.
Mm.
The Legend Award has kind of been one that's been bounced around this time of,
Has to get 50% of the vote.
and it's got to be everybody's agreed at this point that there's really only one guy this year that you could throw a bone to an old vet or whatever but would they get 50% or whatever. I think ultimately it's all boiled down this year that it's time it's time to recognize Larry Goodman for what he's done in Georgia wrestling history.
Most important person in Georgia wrestling. Not Georgia's wrestling history, not the website, not the articles. Larry is universally respected. And if you don't respect Larry, you'll have to learn to fear him, because he is the central figure that has pushed all this together for so long. He's the guy that's kept everything going. He's the writer. He's the voice. I don't think anybody can say they have a larger role in Georgia wrestling and getting people over than he does. A lot of wrestling, I know the fans don't always read the reviews, but folks, he's a big deal, and he's made this possible for us. A lot of what I've done over the years has just been copying Larry Goodman. Okay. Watching him, seeing what he does. He works hard. He goes to shows a long way away. He writes reports. He evaluates things. My show reviews are, when I do one, are how it made me feel. Your show reviews are a breakdown of the show. Larry Goodman is a journalist. Larry Goodman is the guy that has put everyone in Georgia on notice all these years. He's the most important man in Georgia wrestling, and he deserves to be the legend. I don't think there's any better argument.
I'm right there with you. That's what we've all kind of been there at this point, saying that that's kind of it. So definitely that's who I would put in that mix, to say the least. And hopefully it just kind of happens this year. So, well, man, again, we want to make sure that we're plugging out our buddies over at Southern Honor Wrestling. We'll be there this Friday. We're going to be out there. It's December 6th. Get your tickets at southernhonorwrestling.com or head on out to 261 Marietta Road in Canton, Georgia at the Action Building. Show will be this Friday. And remember, Fridays, because the doors open at 7, show starts at 8. It's a little bit back normal. A lot of people are used to that bell time at 7, but it's actually 8 for Southern Honor Wrestling.
Friday.
Head out early, man. We always just like to get out there and get in the mix, do a little talking, get a little.
When somebody's tailgate party, there's people out there cooking out and stuff.
Yeah, it's too cold for those tailgate parties right now, but I'm
sure they're gonna have it. I guarantee you, there's gonna be folks out there tailgating.
Always. But yeah,
they have built a great fan base there.
Yeah, that is true. Well, brother, I mean, any other stuff that you got before we get out of here? Because I know a couple things I just want to remind everybody to make sure they're supporting the show. Patreon.com/tappedOutPod. Join up over there, get some cool little stuff over there. It's a good way to support the show. ProWrestlingTees.com/TappedOutWrestlingPodcast. Buy a tee, help support the show. Got all kinds of them over there that you can pick out. And then, of course, if you always have any feedback for us, you can find us at TappedOutPod on pretty much all of your social media, or email us at tappedoutpod@gmail.com. And if you normally watch the video on Facebook, which a lot of people like, it's on Wednesdays at 7:00. It's available on our Facebook page. But if you're we always ask if you could subscribe to us somewhere on a podcast player, whether it be Apple Podcast, iHeartMedia, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all those good stuff. Leave us a 5-star rating review. We definitely would appreciate that as well. Well, brother, you got anything else before we get out of here?
Slide into my DMs like Dave Bautista did Dana. That's how it goes, folks.
There you go. Brother, if I've got nothing and you've got nothing, what time is it?
It's time to tap out.